Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, in Fiji Island, Africa, Mexico, Spain, to the United Kingdom, and to our brethren in Australia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints. May the good Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening. This is our episode number 10 in the subject, the Bible calendar. And the focal point of such restoration is the time prophecy. But it is even more pertaining to the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. The statement in 2SR 268 let's read the statement saying, therefore, these two temples are types of two sections of the Christian church, with the antitypical sanctuary service made up of these two laws, moral and ceremonial. The first section of the Christian church, from the crucifixion to about 538 AD, was endowed with just such a sanctuary, that is, they had a perfect knowledge of the work in the heavenly to that time, and their faith corresponded with its service. And I would like to read the last portion saying, therefore, as the first temple typified the first section of the early Christian church with faith in a true sanctuary service, just so the second temple has prefigured the last section of this same church with faith in a sanctuary service that would be identical with the first. 2SR 268. And since the Shepherd's Rod plainly telling that the last section of the second antitypical temple, they must have also faith, absolute faith in a sanctuary service that would be identical with the first by which the description of the first antitypical spiritual temple says they had a perfect knowledge of the work in the heavenly to that time, and their faith corresponded with its service. To us our page 268. We already explained several times, brethren, that the antitypical spiritual temple is divided into two sections. The first antitypical spiritual temple, which is the early Christian church, is divided into two sections. The first section is the apostolic church, and the second section is the Ephesus. But it is the apostolic church by which they had the perfect knowledge of the work in the heavenly sanctuary, by which their faith corresponded with its service. So, and if you will notice, historically, there was no such record in the Bible, as well as in the Shempershad or in Spur Prophecy. Brothers and sisters, that they observed Day of Atonement, but rather the only service by which they observe is the Passover and the Pentecost. Now I would like to read Acts of the Apostles. So let's read again. In 389, 390, as well as 391. It says, Paul greatly desired to reach Jerusalem before the Passover, as he would thus have an opportunity to meet those who should come from all parts of the world to attend the feast. And in page 390 it says, upon receiving warning of the plot, Paul decided to go around by way of Macedonia. His plan to reach Jerusalem in time for the Passover services had to be given up, but he hoped to be there at Pentecost. And I would like to read the next paragraph. It says, at Philippi, Paul tarried to keep the Passover. Only Luke remained with him. The other members of the company passing on to Troas to await him there. The Philippians were the most loving and true-hearted of the apostles' converts, and during the 8 days of the feast, he enjoyed peaceful and happy communion with them. Acts of the Apostles 389, 390, and 391. So, the apostle they have perfect knowledge that in their period of time, Jesus Christ was still in the holy place, not in the most holy place. And that's why, as I've said, there is no historical record that they keep the Day of Atonement. And since the great controversy plainly told us 421, saying, for 18 centuries, this work of ministration continued in the first apartment of the sanctuary. The great controversy 421. So we can easily understand that Christ's ministration in the holy place began in 44 AD, ended on 1844. That is exactly 1,800 years. 18 centuries. The Great Controversy 421. And we know that the entire period, the Apostolic Church, that is from 27 AD only up to 100 AD. To 100 AD to 538, this is the period of the first candlestick, Ephesus. The first candlestick on Revelation chapter 1 and chapter 2. So, now, I would like to read to us our page 200. 25. So let us read to us our page 225. It says here, therefore the vineyard is the world, and those sent to labor in it are the church. The parable cannot refer to one literal day of 12 hours, into which God has made 5 calls for laborers in the vineyard, represented by the world. For there is no record where God raised 5 church organizations in one day and have them operating all at the same time. Therefore, the calls in the parable must extend over a period of world history in connection with the church. And that period, Jesus allegorically compares to a 12-hour day into which he hired laborers on 5 different occasions. So, the shepherd's rod plainly told us that God hired laborers on 5 different occasions. And we know that the first call is early in the morning. um, pointing to Israel after the flesh. But if you will notice, brothers and sisters, the 5 different occasions recorded in 2SR 225. 5 different occasions. And occasions, this is one, see, 5 different occasions. And the first one is Passover. That is the first Exodus. And the second one is Pentecost, the Apostolic Church, the 120. The third one, the Millerites, that is trumpets, Feast of Trumpets. By which to inform the people that the high priest will enter the most holy place. So, this is the Millerites. Then number 4 is, of course, Day of Atonement. Day of Atonement. That is the 7th day, Adventist. Then, it's easy to understand. The 5th occasion must be the Feast of Tabernacles. Feast of Tabernacles. So, so those are the 5 different occasions, brothers and sisters. Now, let us focus first to the Millerites, brothers and sisters. The Millerites movement. In White House Recruiter, in page 19, it says, the only revelation of new prophetic truth subsequent to the Reformation is the announcement of the year in which was to begin the work of cleansing the sanctuary, primarily in behalf of the dead, based on Daniel 8:14, but not then fully understood. As its announcement was made by the First-day Adventists, it necessarily follows that they were the third group of servants, with a new and distinctive message. And as is well known, they started proclaiming it in the year 1833, announcing that the cleansing of the sanctuary was to commence in the year 1844. Thus, in 1833, the clock of parabolic time struck the hour of 6. White House Recruiter, page 19. And for sure, it is not just a mere happenstance, because accordingly, and Desire of Ages, that all the ceremonies, Desire of Ages, on page 77, let's read the statement, saying, I would like to read the portion saying, all the ceremonies of the feast were types of the work of Christ. Desire of Ages, page 77. All the ceremonies, not only a part, but all the ceremonies. And in track number 3, on page 72, saying, just as the spirit of prophecy declares that the whole system of types, so not only a part, but the whole system of types and symbols was a compacted prophecy of the gospel, a presentation in which were bound up the promises of redemption. The Acts of the Apostles, page 14. Just so the plan of salvation is unfolded not only in the testimonies of the prophets and in the parables of Christ, but also in the types and symbols of the earthly sanctuary. Track number 3, page 72. Now, we know that anciently, before the high priest will enter the most holy place, there must be 10 days sounding of the trumpets to inform the people that the high priest is about to enter into the most holy place for the day of atonement. So it says here in Leviticus 23 verse 24, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. Leviticus 23, verse 24. And that blowing of the trumpets is to inform and to warn the people so that they could afflict their souls. They could prepare their lives so that they will not be cut off from among the congregation. But the proclamation of William Miller, it is, I do fully believe that 10 days represent 10 years in prophecy, as computed in Ezekiel 4:6 and Numbers 14:34. So the shepherd's rod made it so plain that the First Day Adventists began proclaiming in 1833. So from 1833 to 1843, then we have 1844. So this is 10 years represented by the Feast of Trumpets, 10 days. And in prophecy, 1 day equivalent to 1 year. So this is the proclamation. So the occasion by which the third call had been called by God is represented by the Feast of Trumpet. 5 different occasions The first call is Passover. The second call is Pentecost. The third call is Feast of Trumpets. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the fourth call, it is Day of Atonement. Now let us read 1 SR. Here in 1 SR, on page 74, so let's read the statement here. As the prophetic period, 1 SR page 74, as the prophetic period ended in 1844, the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary was opened, into which Christ entered. If this incident marked the beginning of the atonement, there would have been no better or more opportune time for a call from heaven than at the end of the great prophetic period, the Day of Atonement being the most solemn time for the church. Seventh-day Adventists were called out by a prophet and are practically the only people who believe in the 2,300 days. We are the only people who have proclaimed it since 1844 and are now in the atonement or the time of judgment. 1 SR page 74. Now let us focus our attention to the last call, by which the last call, the climactic point, of course, it is the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Tabernacles, because that is the occasion that follow after the Day of Atonement. And the Shepherd's Rod says 5 different occasions. Different. Passover, Pentecost, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, then Feast of Tabernacles. Brothers and sisters, that is the last call. Feast of Tabernacles. Now, in Leviticus, let me see. Uh, 23. Saying, Leviticus 23, verse 34 to 35. So it says, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles, for 7 days unto the Lord. On the first day shall be an holy convocation, ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And on the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly. And ye shall do no servile work therein. Leviticus 23, verse 33 to verse 36. Now, here in Patriarchs and Prophets, I would like to read. uh, Patriarchs and Prophets. On page 540, it says, like the Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles was commemorative in memory of their pilgrim life in the wilderness. The people were now to leave their houses and dwell in booths or arbors formed from the green branches of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and the boughs of fig trees, and willows of the brook. Leviticus 23, verse 40, verse 42, and verse 43. Let us distinctly separate the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is only a commemoration. But let us distinctly separate the antitypical fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles, because in 541 it says, the Feast of Tabernacles was not only commemorative, but typical. So, to repeat again, let us distinctly separate the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is only in commemoration to their pilgrim life in the wilderness. But let us distinctly separate the fulfillment of that Feast of Tabernacles, which is the antitype, the antitypical fulfillment, brothers and sisters. And then it says, it not only pointed back to the wilderness sojourn, but as the Feast of Harvest, it celebrated the ingathering of the fruits of the earth and pointed forward to the great day of final ingathering, when the Lord of the harvest shall send forth his reapers to gather the tares together in bundles for the fire, and to gather the wheat into his garner. At that time the wicked will all be destroyed. They will become as though they had not been. Obadiah verse 16. And every voice in the whole universe will unite in joyful praise to God. Says the Revelator, every creature which in heaven and on the earth and under the earth, and such are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I saying, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb, forever and ever. Revelation 5, verse 13. It is very important to study the Feast of Tabernacles, because in this paragraph, Revelation chapter 5 was attached to such event. And we know Revelation 5, verse 13 is a very important part in the subject. The seven seals. For according to the shepherd's rod, it is the heart and the key of the subject. The seven seals, according to SR page 100. 193, saying, but the fifth chapter, to SR page 193, but the fifth chapter, separated from the fourth and the sixth, cannot be comprehended, for these chapters contain one subject, namely, the seven seals. The fifth chapter is mentioned because it is the heart and key of the subject. And we know Revelation chapter 5 contain 14 verses. But the verse that had been attached to the Feast of Tabernacles in Patriarchs and Prophets 541 is Revelation 5 verse 13. Now let us read track number 3. Now let's read here in track number 3 on page 82. We could begin on page 81, then page 82. I would like to read on page 81. As the wave ship and the wave lobes are typical, then also the Feast of Tabernacles must be typical. Otherwise, the ceremony would not have been observed as a part of the harvest rite. And as in the type, the feast was to be celebrated at the close of the final ingathering of the year's harvest, then correspondingly, in the antitype, it must be celebrated at the close of the final ingathering of earth's harvest, which is nearing its fulfillment. So the time consumed in producing and offering the wave sheaf and the wave loaves, also in observing the Feast of Tabernacles, is representative of the entire spiritual harvest time of the living and of the dead. Bearing out this fact, the Small Prophecy says, the Feast of Tabernacles was not only commemorative but typical. It celebrated the ingathering of the fruits of the earth and pointed forward to the great day of final ingathering, when the Lord of the harvest shall send forth his reapers to gather the tares together in bundles for fire, and to gather the wheat into his garner. At the time, the wicked will all be destroyed. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 541. Plainly, therefore, since the first and the second fruits of the literal harvest and its attendant rites foreshadowed a spiritual harvest of first and second fruits, they are to be climaxed by the antitypical Feast of Tabernacles. I saw the saints, says the servant of the Lord, in describing this celebration, leaving the cities and villages, and associating together in companies, and living in the most solitary places. Angels provided them food and water, while the wicked were suffering from hunger and thirst. Early Writings, page 282. Thus, ancient Israel's dwelling in both typifies modern Israel, eventually dwelling in the woods. Irrefutably, therefore, the harvest of Matthew 13 precedes the close of provision, and is the time of the ingathering of the first and second fruits, the 144,000, and the great multitude, all the saints who are to be translated. Track number 3, page 81 and page 82. Now, brothers and sisters, the shepherds had made it so plain that the time when the saints are leaving the cities and villages, that is the time that they were celebrating the antitypical Feast of Tabernacles. And we know that that is in the period of the little time of trouble. So let us now study closely the little time of trouble. And that is why To repeat again, one of the principal reason why it is in absolute importance, it is necessary for God to restore the Bible calendar, because without such knowledge, if the Bible calendar will not be restored, then there is no possibility that we could be able to discern the time of the Feast of Tabernacles, brothers and sisters, which is a very important event. Now, let us focus first to the time when the people of God are leaving the cities and villages, according to um, that statement given by the voice of inspiration. And that is during the time when they were celebrating the antithetical Feast of Tabernacles. According to our reading in track number 3, page 81 and page 82. Now, let us read the statement here. And I would like to read 1SR page 36. 1SR page 36. As an illustration and comparison of the faithfulness and unity of the people at the time of trouble during the plagues, we quote early writings, page 282 and 283. I saw the saints leaving the cities and villages and associating together in companies and living in the most solitary places. Now, I would like to emphasize first, for sure the plagues mentioned here, brothers and sisters, could not be the 7 literal plagues, because it will be contradictory to the chronological order of events. Before the 7 last plagues, literal, will be poured out, all the righteous are gathered already in that kingdom we commonly called as the premillennial kingdom. But during these plagues, according to 1SR page 36, that is the time that the saints are leaving the cities and villages and associating together in companies and living in the most solitary places. But if you will go to early writings, I would like to read early writings on page 33 and page 34. It says, I saw that God had children who do not see and keep the Sabbath. They have not rejected the light upon it. And at the commencement of the time of trouble, we were filled with the Holy Ghost, as we went forth and proclaimed the Sabbath more fully. This enraged the churches and nominal Adventists, as they could not refute the Sabbath truth. And at this time, God's chosen all saw clearly that we have the truth. And they came out and endured the persecution with us. I saw the sword, famine, pestilence, and great confusion in the land. The wicked thought that we had brought the judgments upon them, and they rose up and took counsel to rid the earth of us, thinking that then the evil would be stayed. In the time of trouble, we all fled from the cities and villages, but were pursued by the wicked, who entered the houses of the saints with a sword. So, yeah, if you have leisure time, you can read the entire pages. But I would like only to illustrate early writings, page 33 and page 34, that at the commencement of the time of trouble, the saints, I would like to focus our attention to the 144,000 living saints. They proclaimed the Sabbath more fully, and they were already filled with the Holy Ghost. But after such proclamation, they leave the cities and villages. They leave the cities and villages. Why is it that they leave the cities and villages? Because their work was already finished. And that is the third period of the loud cry proclamation. Because there are 4 periods, right, in the loud cry proclamation. The first period is loud cry to the 144,000. Second, during the Great Tribulation, loud cry to all Sabbath keepers. Third, the loud cry during the little time of trouble. And fourth, the loud cry during the great time of trouble. But the statement that we read in our writings, page 33 and page 34, that is sometimes called short time of trouble. And also sometimes it is called little time of trouble. And that is the proclamation of the message on the symbolical earth. And after such message had been proclaimed to the entire territory of the symbolical earth, the saints leave the cities and villages. And that is during the Feast of Tabernacles, according to the Voice of Inspiration. But we know that as far as the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy are thus concerned, the deliverance of God's people, it is during the Passover week, brothers and sisters. And I would like to make a short illustration. For example, this is the little time of trouble. Then the saints proclaiming the message, loud cry. But after such proclamation is finished, they leave the cities and villages. And that is during Feast of Tabernacles. So that must be October 16 to October 22. And since they will be delivered on April 14, Bible calendar, so more or less, this little time of trouble would not exist more than 1 year. More or less 6 months or more than 6 months. Brothers and sisters, or it might be exactly seven months. Now, so that is the arrangement of the event, and that is why we need to study all these prophecies together with the restoration of the Bible Bible calendar. Now, let us go back first to the proclamation of the message proclaimed by William Miller. In tract number 5, let's read the statement. On page 78, it says, the sixth trumpet. Tract number 5, page 78. The sixth trumpet. Revelation 9, verse 13 to Revelation 11:14. Chapter 9, verse 13 and 14. And the sixth angel sounded. Then I heard a voice from the four horns on the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels, which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And then it says, in coming from the golden altar, the command, loose the four angels, shows that the sixth trumpet sounded sometime before the veil to the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary was lifted. Otherwise, the voice would have come from the throne, the most holy place. So that is very plain here, brothers and sisters. Remember, it is concerning the sounding of the sixth trumpet, not the period. Because it says, but as has been shown, we are still in the period of the fifth trumpet. So even in the days of Beti-Hotep, accordingly, they were still in the period of the fifth trumpet. So let us distinctly separate the sounding and the period. The period never overlapped. Only the events and the sounding. So, now let us study closely, brothers and sisters. So, tract number 5, page 78, is plainly telling us that the sixth trumpet sounded prior to the time when the veil in the most holy place was lifted, due to the fact that the voice cometh from the golden altar. And the golden altar is located in the holy place. But if you will analyze closely, brethren, that could not be the perfect fulfillment of the sounding of the sixth trumpet. Because the divine principle, as stated in tract number 5, on page 35, saying, naturally, then the first seal must precede the first trumpet, the second seal, the second trumpet, and so on, like the needle and the shuttle, rather than that all 7 seals must precede all 7 trumpets. So that is the divine principle. The sixth seal must precede the sixth trumpet. Or in other words, each trumpet must be found in the closing period of its corresponding seal. And the best example is the first seal. Because the first seal covers from Adam to the flood. So that is the best example that we could use, this is the entire period of the first seal, Adam to the flood. But the the first trumpet rather, but the first trumpet is from the 120 years proclamation of Noah. 2344 BC, then 2464 BC, 120 years. So the first trumpet sounded in the closing period of the first seal. So that is the divine principle stated in track number 5, page 35. But the occurrence in the days of William Miller is contrary to the proper application of the subject, the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets. Because the commencement of the sealing of the 6th seal, represented by the altar, commenced in 1844. But the sounding of the 6th trumpet, which is the message of William Miller, which is called the Midnight Cry, precedes the period of the 6th seal. So, it is contrary to the proper application of the parable. And that is why the midnight cry must be repeated according to 2 SR 181, by which the direct application must found in the judgment that pertains to the living. And the shepherd's rod told us in track number 5 on page 34, saying, fulfilled prophecies are seen therefore to be employed by the Scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. So, that occurrence in 1833 to 1843 served only as the groundwork for that prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled, or the particular object in view. So, since the trumpets, the purpose of the trumpets in Leviticus 23, verse 24 and 25, is to inform the people that the high priest will enter the most holy place and to prepare their lives to afflict their souls so that they will not be cut off from among the congregation. The perfect fulfillment of that illustration must be found in the judgment that pertains to the living. To the people who must know that their cases are on trial, in 2 TG 12:30. Because it is, in reality, not exactly appropriate the object in view of such message of sounding of trumpet to inform that Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in October 22, 1844, by which in reality, the cases that had been considered at that time are the people who are already lying unconscious in their graves 1,000 years ago. Those who died under the first seal from Adam to the flood in that generation. And the people that had been informed, the cases is not themselves. And the word heavenly summons, it is illogical. For example, the court, the presiding judge will issue summons to someone, and then the summoner, he will give the letter to another people. That is illogical. So, to repeat again, the term summons recorded in the Shepherd's Rod is applied to the saints that will no longer to taste death, to the people that they need to know that their cases are on trial. Brothers and sisters. So, the statement in 2SR 164 saying, he who fails to respond to the heavenly summons will be left without the seal or covering of God, and therefore they must be cut off on the typical day of, as prefigured in the typical day of atonement. That statement can be easily understood that the heavenly summons had been served prior to that predicted event, the Day of Atonement, the blotting out of names. Brothers and sisters, the blotting out of names, by which we explained several times that that is a terrible or great and dreadful day of the Lord, by which in track number 4, page 60 and 61, it is called the Day of Angels, the great and dreadful day of the Lord, which is called the Day of Angels, according to track number 4, pages 60 and page 61, saying, in an effort to save our brethren from the imminent vengeance of God, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And it is even more pointing to the time when Jesus Christ will lace off his priestly attire and clothe himself with the garments of vengeance. That is called the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Now, we read several times, brothers and sisters, here in Testimonies for the Church, in volume 2, on page 190, let me read to you Testimonies for the Church, volume 2, 190, saying, Jesus has left us word. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all once, we are waiting and watching for the return of the Master, who is to bring the morning, lest coming suddenly, he find us sleeping. What time is he referred to? Not to the revelation of Christ in the clouds of heaven to find a people asleep, no, but to his return from his ministration in the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, when he lays off his priestly attire and clothed himself with garments of vengeance. And when the mandate goes forth, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. So the voice of inspiration saying that the coming mentioned in the parable Jesus Christ in Mark 13, Matthew 24, is Christ coming or his return to the most holy place. And I think all of us will agree that the word return cannot be applied in October 22, 1844, by which that is the first time by which Jesus Christ entered into the most holy place. So the word return plainly indicating, brethren, that Jesus Christ left the most holy place. If Jesus Christ will not left the most holy place, then the word return cannot be applied. If Jesus Christ would be in the most holy place from October 22, 1844 to the general close of provision, then such statement in the vision of Sister White must be in gross mistake. Because the word return, brothers and sisters, must be pointing at to a time when Jesus Christ, left the most holy place and then go back and or return. So that's what it means by the word return. Now, I would like to read this reading in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 2, 691. And, so, I would like to read this reading in Volume 2, page 691. It says, when Jesus rise up in the most holy place and lays off his mediatorial garments and clothed himself with the garments of vengeance, in place of the priestly attire, the work for sinners will be done. The period of time will then have come when the mandate will go forth. He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give everyone according to give every man according as his work shall be. So, I would like to illustrate that statement in the vision of the prophet. So, that is pointing to the general clause of provision. Most holy place. So, Jesus Christ left the most holy place and then clothed himself with the garments of vengeance. Garments of vengeance. According to volume 2, page 690. And for sure, not only, I would like to read another statement. In early writings, here in early writings, 281, then I saw Jesus lay off his priestly attire and clothe himself with his most kingly robes. This one is not, Jesus did not wear the garments of vengeance, but with his most kingly robes. So let us distinctly separate this event. And early writings 281. Or in other words, I would like to show a simple illustration. So there are two events by which Jesus Christ leave the most holy place. This one, Jesus Christ clothed himself with the garments of vengeance. But in early writings, when Jesus Christ leave the most holy place, he wear the most kingly robes. King of kings and Lord of lords. If you still remember, brethren, I will longer reading in the Great Controversy 490, that such irrevocable decision will be pronounced in the heavenly sanctuary while the saints are still in their mortal state. So, these two events, brothers and sisters, for sure, the saints, there are already saints that have been granted immortality. So the statement in volume 2, 690 must precede these events. I would like to read the Old Symbolic Code. Old Symbolic Code. One Symbolic Code number 7, page 9. Let's read one Symbolic Code number 7, page 9. It says, Christ's departure Christ's departure from the holy place. So this statement is holy place. It says, Christ's departure from the holy place at the consummation of the investigative judgment. So, it could not be the departure of Jesus Christ from 44 AD to 1844. That I would like to make a very simple illustration, brethren. I would like to. 44 AD to 1844, Jesus Christ is in the holy place. But in 1844, in reality, he did not depart. But the veil in the most holy place was lifted. So Jesus Christ still in the same place. Just to move forward. Because it says that the entire sanctuary in 1844 became most holy place. For example, this is the entire sanctuary, holy place, most holy place. Then in 1844, this veil was lifted. But before the veil will be lifted, this door must be closed first. The door, the entrance in the holy place must be closed first. And after this entrance had been closed, the veil was lifted. Then Jesus Christ standing in the front of God the Father in the most holy place. So what I'm trying to emphasize that, first, the term departure cannot be appropriately applied to the occurrence in 44 AD to 1844. And second, why is it that it cannot be applied in that time? Because the departure of Jesus Christ in the holy place is at the consummation of the investigative judgment, whereas the investigative judgment began in October 22, 1844. So the statement is very plain. It says, Christ's departure from the holy place at the consummation of the investigative judgment is to result in his visible second advent, whereas the event of Ezekiel 9 and Zechariah 2 verse 9 to 11 is an invisible coming. Now, let us now study closely the statement Christ's departure from the holy place. And at that time, we need to follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. Now herein, I would like to read to us our page 100. 21 to SR page 121. And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Revelation 17 verse 1. The angel that was talking to John is one of the seven which had the seven vials of the seven last plagues. See Revelation 15:7 and 16:1. It will be noticed that he had the vial of the plague ready, but it had not been poured out at the time he said to John, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore. By the information given, it is certain that the event predicted by the symbol, the woman sitting on the beast, is shortly before the plagues are poured out and in the time when the woman is to be judged. To SR page 121. Now the shepherd's rod plainly declaring, and it is also stated in the Bible, in Revelation 17 verse 1, that one of the seven angels having seven vials is talking to John the Beloved. And at the time when the angel is talking to John, they had already the seven vials. And the shepherd says, declared, see Revelation 15:7. Now let us read track number 5, 116, and 117. Track number 5, 116, and 117. I would like to read 117 verse. It says, And after the judicial tribunal leaves the temple, one of the four beasts will give unto the seven angels seven golden vials full of the wrath of God. Now I would like to read again Revelation 15:7 as stated in track number 5, 117. And after the judicial tribunal leaves the temple, one of the four beasts will give unto the seven angels seven golden vials, full of the wrath of God. Now analyze closely. Who gave the seven vials to the seven angels? One of the four beasts. Very plain. When does that beast, of course it is either Moses, Abel, Elijah, or Enoch. One of these four. They will be the one, or he will be the one, to give the seven vials to the seven angels, which is represented by the seven last plagues. Now ponder deeply, brethren. In 2 SR 121, by which actually based in the Bible. Revelation 17 verse 1. That one of the seven angels is talking to John. Now if we will apply it to John the Beloved. So, We'll be saying that from 96 AD to 98 AD, this is the period of time that the angel is talking to John. But the Bible is very plain. When that angel, one of the 7 angels, is talking to John, they had already the 7 vials. Are we saying that the 7 vials already had in their hands during this period of time? Who will give the 7 vials to the 7 angels? One of the 4 beasts. Revelation 15:7. One of the 4 beasts. It might be Moses, it might be Abel, it might be Elijah, it might be Enoch. One of them. When does one of the 4 beasts will give the 7 vials to the 7 angels? According to the Voice of Inspiration says, brothers and sisters, after the judicial tribunal leaves the temple. It could not be 96 AD to 98 AD. How could it be that they leave the most holy place at the time when they did not yet enter? So, we need to study closely the statement given by the Voice of Inspiration. And for sure, that occurrence in Revelation 17 verse 1 cannot be applied to John the Beloved himself. But it must be pointing to an antitypical John. Brothers and sisters. Now these pages in track number 5, 116 and 117 is under, brothers and sisters, the 7th trumpet. Now I would like to read Revelation 11 verse 19. The verse that had been attached to Isaiah chapter 6. And you can read that pages in Bible commentary for BC 1138 and 1139. And you can see Revelation 11 verse 19 is attached to Revelation 11:19 is attached to Isaiah chapter 6. And the Spirit of prophecy says in that reading, in for BC 11:39, saying, they are privileged to see by faith what is going on in the heavenly sanctuary. Now, I would like to make an illustration because the earthly temple or the earthly sanctuary is a pattern to the heavenly sanctuary. We already declared 44 AD, Jesus Christ entered to the holy place. So at that time, the holy place is open, but the most holy is still closed. We have eaten 44. What is the statement in 2 SR 268? the early Christian church, they had a perfect knowledge concerning the sanctuary service in the heavenly, and their faith corresponded with its service. 2SR 268. And the only things that they could see is the holy place, because the most holy is still closed. No wonder why Apostle Paul in Hebrews chapter 9 on verse 5, he himself declared that he could not explain what is going on in the most holy place. Why? Because it was not yet opened. Brothers and sisters. But we know that even though the doors is still opened from 44 AD to 1844, we know that in 538 AD, it was trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn on the earth, by which in that period of time, God's people is in total darkness concerning the occurrences in the heavenly sanctuary. So the term trodden underfoot is applied only to the holy place, as stated by Jesus Christ in Matthew 24 verse 15. Brothers and sisters, only the holy place that had been trodden underfoot. Because even though exceeding great, for example, there was no exceeding great horn, still they could have no knowledge concerning the proceedings in the most holy place, because it was closed, still closed, and still in the future. But what happened in 1844, according to the Shepherd's Rod, for example, 2SR 215, the entrance in the holy place is closed, and then after it was closed, the entrance to the most holy place is opened. Now, for example, this is the sanctuary. So, for example, there is an entrance here, entrance to the holy place. So, this entrance, brothers and sisters, it must be closed first before this veil will be opened. And it was in October 22, 1844 that this door is closed and the veil was lifted. So, the only thing that was shown by God to Sister White is the commencement. They have been given the privilege when Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place. They have been given privilege before the door is closed. But after the door is closed, in the holy place, they could see nothing. And that is the reason why the only knowledge that Sister White has, not only to Sister White, but to the succeeding generation, at the time when, brothers and sisters, at the time when the door is still closed. And very limited. The only understanding that was given by God to Sister White and all her associates that Jesus Christ entered the most holy place in October 22, 1844. And then they saw the Ten Commandments, by which, among the Ten Commandments, it is the fourth commandment that shine more brighter. And besides that, nothing. Therefore, we can easily understand that Sister White must be antitypical Daniel. Because the only thing that was shown by God to Daniel is the commencement. Unlike with John the Beloved, from start to finish. According to track number 15, on page 13, saying, both seers distinctly declare that the event which they saw was the judgment. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel was led to look into the sanctuary while preparations were being made for the judgment to convene, whereas John was led to look into the sanctuary after the judgment had been set up. In fact, John not only saw the judgment in progress, but he saw the whole proceeding from start to finish. Track number 15, page 13. But for sure, it cannot be directly applied to John the Beloved or John the Revelator who saw the vision. Because in reality, what he saw is only symbols, not the actual significance. So the voice of inspiration is plainly telling, brothers and sisters, now, since in October 22, 1844, the door that had been closed is only the door, the entrance to the holy place. Now, I would like to, for example, this is the sanctuary, because we are on the earth, here on earth. So this veil was lifted. The entrance to the holy place is closed. So the statement, Christ's departure from the holy place, meaning Jesus Christ opened the entrance to the holy place, because this is the only door in the sanctuary. And it was illustrated, brethren. It was illustrated by the vision of Sister White. That at the time when Jesus Christ depart from the holy place, although this entire sanctuary, I would like to declare, this entire sanctuary became most holy place. But the holy place is still there. Jesus Christ's departure from the holy place. Jesus Christ cannot depart unless He opened this door. And we have given the privilege while that door remain open. Because when this door is closed, indicates probation close. Open and shut door. And brothers and sisters, To repeat again, we are studying concerning the four beasts. Now, this veil was lifted. The entrance is closed. The statement that at the time when one of the seven angels is talking to John, but that is not literal John. Because at the time when that one of the seven angels is talking to John, antitypical John, they had already the seven vials. Who gave them? One of the four beasts. When? After they left the judicial tribunal, according to the reading. Track number 5, page 117. So, that would be in the time together with Jesus Christ. Now, I would like to read to you. Track number 3 on page 46. It says, the angels who are round about the throne in the heavenly sanctuary during the judgment of Daniel 7 verse 9 and 10 and Revelation 5:11 shall, as the parables explain, descend with the Son of Man. When he comes to his temple, his church, to separate by judgment the wicked from among the just, and to purge as gold and silver those who may abide the day of his coming, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Malachi 3 verse 2 and 3. In graphic demonstration that he will come to earth with all his angels, that is pointing to the cherubims. Because all the seraphims remain in the most holy place. Isaiah chapter 6. The seraphims has 6 wings, but the cherubims had only 4 wings. In graphic demonstration that he will come to earth with all his angels to execute judgment upon the living, the Lord revealed himself prophetically to Ezekiel as being brought enthroned to earth by 4 living creatures. That is Ezekiel 1. Just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church takes place. So we need to study closely. Who are they? The hypocrites. Just before the slaughter of the hypocrites in the church takes place, and as each of the living creatures has the face of a lion, the face of a calf, the face of a man, and the face of an eagle, Ezekiel 1 verse 10, the same judicial insignia have the beasts who are before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary in Revelation 4 verse 7. In the time of the judgment of the dead. And as they descend to earth, they thereby symbolically show that the work of the mediatorial judicial throne which convenes and presides over the judgment of the dead is extended to earth. It could not be the half-hour silence because during the half-hour silence, there is no proceedings. The proceedings is adjourned. But this occurrence, the proceedings is extended to the earth. And we will deal that subject on the opening of the seventh seal. Because our particular object in view, brothers and sisters, to repeat again, is first the commencement of the ingathering of the 144,000 living saints. So, let us distinctly separate the ingathering and the announcement. In 2TG, number 43, page 11. Moreover, since the announcement of the separation of the saints from the sinners originates with the 11th hour servants, and we know that that is pointing to the last ordained ministry. So their duty is to announce the statement, the separation of the saints, meaning the gathering of the saints. Because to separate or to gather is to separate. As stated by the shepherd's rod, that it is Jesus Christ who will gather the 144,000 living saints. In 2TG number 44, page 37, saying, here we are again told that there are two reapings, one by the Son of Man and another by an angel. The reaping by the Son of Man precedes the reaping by the angel. The Son of Man therefore gathers the first fruits. But the voice of inspiration is plainly telling that before the gathering will come, there must be an announcement first. Announcement is a message of information. To inform the saints, brothers and sisters, the gathering. And it is illogical that we will be among the saints to be gathered if we oppose the message of information. Now, let us go back again, brothers and sisters. We know that the shepherd's rod is plainly telling you and I that it is an erroneous idea that the entire first fruits are demanded by God. Here in 2 Symbolic Code number 10, page 9. 2 Symbolic Code number 10, page 9. From these scriptures, we are not, however, to draw the erroneous conclusion that all of the first fruits are demanded by the Lord. God requires only an offering of the first fruits, as is proved by the fact of the wave sheaf, presented to the Lord before the individual could harvest his crop of first fruits. To Symbolic Code number 10, page 9. And, brethren, I do fully believe that the first of the first fruits must be pointing to Shepherd's Rod believers. I would like to read that statement in the Old Symbolic Code, saying, 9 Symbolic Code 1 to 12, page 7. 9 Symbolic Code 1 to 12, page 7. Let us all as a Davidian band remember that we are called to the high office of conservators of the gospel, restorers of the old paths, repairers of the breach. We are called as the first of the first fruits from Laodicea, and thus we are to serve as saviors to and of Laodicea. Obadiah 17 and 21, or Obadiah chapter 1, verse 17 and verse 21. Hence, obviously, before we can save our brethren from the fatally pernicious malady of Laodiceanism, we must first save ourselves from it. And to do this, we must now and forever absolutely stop treating symptoms and instead get at the cause. Stop dosing ourselves first for this and then for that, but instead correctly apply the sovereign remedy, the message in the heart, until a complete cure is effected. We know that the only remedy of such spirit Laodiceanism is the salve, the eye salve. And that is the present truth. This statement, brethren, if you will only study seriously in 9 Symbolic Code 1 to 12, page 7 and 8, is a complete admonition that we as Davidian, brothers and sisters, must settle first the problem among us before we could go to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, sighing and crying. Let us settle first. Look at the situation among the media today. Fighting, quarreling, and bickering each other. If we, the Davidian, cannot sit down together as Christians, then how could we expect the non-Shepherd's Rod believer, the Seventh-day Adventist world? Now, concerning the first fruits, there is a specific number. But concerning the first of the first fruits, there is no specific number. Why? I do fully believe that one of the principal reasons why God do not reveal the specific number, so that none of us should become boastful. And I remember in one SR Pocket edition, the statement on page 19 and page 20, saying, nevertheless, still another baffling question requires an answer. If Christ query, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth? Luke 18, verse 8. Also his statement, fear not, little flock, Luke 12 verse 32, mean that few are to be saved and found living when he comes for his own, then how can there be an innumerable multitude? Though at first glance, the question propounds a paradox, it is quickly resolved. And the idea that only few living saints are to meet him in the air is effectively dissipated when account is taken of the facts that the harvest truly is plenteous. Matthew 9 verse 37. That it is the end of the world, Matthew 13 verse 39. And that the very term harvest itself denotes a larger gathering than at any previous season. Then it says, furthermore, the query, shall he find faith on the earth, is not questioning the number of saints at this particular coming, but rather faith itself regardless of number. So the coming mentioned in Luke 18 verse 8, it says, no, it is not questioning the number of the saints. In this particular coming, but rather faith itself, regardless of number. And if at his appearing in the clouds to take home the faithful, he finds no faith in the earth, then what about his waiting church, which is to be without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, be it small or great? Obviously, his coming recorded in Luke 18 verse 8 cannot be the one of 1 Thessalonians 4:17, his coming in the clouds. But it could be the one of Malachi 3 verse 2 and 3, and Matthew 13 verse 30, 47 to 48, leading to Matthew 25 verse 31 to 33. His coming to his temple is to separate the sinners from the saints, at the commencement of which time inspiration says, who may abide the day of his coming. One is our pocket edition, page 19 and page 20. So, brothers and sisters, Luke 18 verse 8 is closely connected to Revelation 11 verse 19, which is attached to Isaiah chapter 6. That it is a high privilege to see what is going on in the heavenly sanctuary when Jesus Christ temporarily opened the door, the entrance into the holy place, so that we could view what is going on, the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. And it cannot be mistaken. The one that had been given the privilege is the last day church. For BC 1138 represents the last day church. And according to 1TG, that is the church that will announce the great and dreadful day of the Lord, by which can never be applied to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. 1TG 27, page 8. Since this message announces that the great and dreadful day of the Lord is at hand, that the judgment for the living is about to begin, and since Isaiah the prophet was given a vision of the Lord moving into his temple for this judicial work, the prophet experiences while he was yet in vision must, therefore, represent the experience of God's servants who are to announce the day of the Lord. His experience and commission must be our experience and commission. To repeat again, the main subject is the judgment for the living, by which we explained several times, that is the blotting out of names. Brothers and sisters. And to repeat again, this church cannot be applied to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Because the only message that was given by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, according to the General Conference Special, page 39, is the judgment for the dead. And accordingly, it does not even touch the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Then for sure, it must be pointed to the 11th hour church. Pointing to the 11th hour church. They will be the one to announce the judgment for the living. And to repeat again, the statement in 2SR 164 saying, "But when our high priest shall begin the atonement for the living, there must be a message of present fruit. Sounding of the trumpet, urging everyone to lay hold on the Lamb of God, which is Jesus Christ, come to the sanctuary, confess his sin, to secure his life. Unless the close of the judgment for the dead and the commencement for the living be made known to us, we would have no present truth while the judgment for the living is in session. Neither such judgment is legal or just or legal. But he who fails to respond to the heavenly summons will be left without the seal or covering of God. Therefore, they must be cut off as prefigured in the typical day of atonement." So the term cut off there cannot refer to the slaughtering, because the slaughtering will occur on Passover week. 2SR 216. But that is the Day of Atonement. It can apply only to the blotting out of names. So that passage in 2SR 164, that Jesus Christ will not begin the blotting out of names in the congregation among the living without sending first heavenly summons. And that heavenly summons is the knowledge when the judgment that pertains to the dead is closed. What judgment? Blotting out of names. Because the statement in 2SR 164 saying, while the investigation of the dead is in progress, there can be no separation among the congregation of the living. And we explained it several times, that such statement is saying, while the blotting out of names that pertains to the dead are still unfinished, there would be no blotting out of names among the congregation of the living. And we already explained to you, brothers and sisters, that no, it is not just a mere happenstance. Brothers and sisters, it is not just a mere happenstance that the age of Isaac is 180, and the 3 full hours is also 180. 3 hours times 60 equals 180. The age of Isaac is 180. as stated in Volume 3, 369. And the mere fact that Isaac was offered in Mount Moriah indicates the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, the sanctuary grounds. In 1SR page 15, in volume 3, page 369, we read, Isaac was a figure of the Son of God who was offered a sacrifice for the sins of the world. Again, we read in Desire of Ages, page 112, and in the ram divinely provided in the place of Isaac, Abraham saw a symbol of him who was to die for the sins of men. Thus, Isaac and the ram are symbols of Christ's submission, death, and sacrifice. And all of us knew that Isaac died at the age of 180. And the name Isaac contained 5 letters, indicating to the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. Brethren, in track number 8, page 5, Mount Moriah indicates sanctuary grounds. I would like to read to you. Track number 8, page 5. It says, the 7 lamps, verse 5, being part of the sanctuary fixtures, gives conclusive evidence that the heavenly throne scene occurs in the sanctuary, whereas the subsequent Zion scene takes place upon Mount Zion, the king's earthly palace grounds, not upon Mount Moriah, the sanctuary grounds, where it would necessarily have to take place, were it to denote that the event occurs in the sanctuary. So Mount Moriah represents sanctuary grounds, or pointing to Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary. And there is no doubt, brethren, that the age of Isaac, 180, is pointing to 180 Day of Atonements. 180 Day of Atonements. So, if you will look at brothers and sisters, granting October 22, which is our common understanding. October 22, 1844. Then we will add 180 years. So that would be October 11th. That's why, brothers and sisters, that is computer, and it can never be mistaken, although we'll explain it later. But the reality is that October 21, October 10, 2023, and that is in Gregorian, that is March 22, 2022. And we are now 2020. That is the Day of Atonement. The blotting out of sins that pertains to the 144,000 living saints that will no longer to taste death. Although maybe at this time, there might be difficulty to understand, but we will guarantee to you that those days is perfect. October 10, 2023 in Gregorian calendar, that would be March 22, 2022. And that is why we have short illustration, brothers and sisters. And for me, it is not just a mere happenstance, but it is purposive design. Because in 2SR 181, the midnight cry must be repeated. And we began proclaiming this message in October 10, 2012. In Gregorian, I think that is May 19, 2011. Is it May 19? This one is May 19, 2011. May 19, 2011. Look at the type, the trumpet, when William Miller sounded the primary phase of the sounding of the sixth trumpet. That is 10 years, because in the Bible, that is 10 days. And Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in October 10, 1844. But in Gregorian calendar, that is October 21, 1844. And look at the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy. From October 10, 2012, 10 years, to October 10, 2022, or March 27, 2021 in Gregorian, this coming March, that is the blotting out of names. All the names of the wicked under the seventh seal, the congregation of the living, will be completely blotted out. Who are they? They are those who did not accept the present truth. They are those who are not submissive. And sad to say, sometimes there are the Bedean who is attracted with this message. But when the devil began to attack the characters, ruin the reputation of the messenger, they immediately turn away. That is, for me, is very sad, but only God knows. Our only duty is to proclaim the message. And for sure, the time will come, either we will leap for joy or gnash our teeth. And that is why here in 1 TJ 28:12, it is a wonderful statement saying, indeed, the important thing is not how good or how bad we are or have been, but how susceptible and submissive to present truth we are now while it unfolds. Are we susceptible? The word susceptible is redemptive or brothers and sisters, open-hearted. It says, so that is the most important thing at this present time. How susceptible and submissive to present truth we are now while it unfolds. The real burden of our prayer should be that we catch a vision of the truth that makes free, if accepted as the scroll and rules. One TG 28, page 12. Brethren, I would like to emphasize again that concerning that declaration of Jesus Christ, that no man in heaven, nor in earth, nor under the earth can open that book. Must be reality. Brothers and sisters. And it is pertaining to the sanctuary doctrine. According to early writings, on page 42, the open and the shut door, I saw that Jesus had shut the door of the holy place, and no man can open it, and that he had opened the door into the most holy, and no man can shut it. Revelation 3, verse 7 and 8. What is Revelation 3, 7 and 8? That is the description under the Philadelphian church. The Philadelphian church is a picture of the triumphant church. Now, brethren, it is God who declared it. No man, not only the statement, nor under the earth, that is pertaining to the devil, and even to all the wicked angels. In 2 TJ 24, page 16, saying, are not these tests strong enough to convince any of you that the secret things of God, such as the cancelled prophecies, are not disclosed by finite men, no, not by the devil either? That when God wants a thing to be a secret, it remains cancelled until He Himself reveals it. Then when it is revealed, all are to know that God Himself is at work. And you know what? That statement is applied only to the sanctuary doctrine. For example, the subject of the seven seals and the seven trumpets. We know that the true explanation of that subject is in the days of B.T. Hotep. But in the days of Sister White, Uriah Smith, using the writings of Barnes and Ketz, engaged private interpretation. But brethren, concerning the sanctuary doctrine, it was locked up. The door is closed. They could not invent or whether human inventions or devil inventions, they could not engage private interpretation. Look at the situation in October 22, 1844. You cannot even see that there is another movement that teaches that Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in October 22, 1844, except the Seventh-day Adventist Church, according to 2SR 133. Or in other words, God placed an absolute protection concerning the sanctuary doctrine that no one can explain it except under the inspiration of the Spirit of Christ. And I'm trying to emphasize this thing, brothers and sisters, because had the Spirit of Christ, brothers and sisters, had not been bestowed unto us to understand these messages, if you will say it is another spirit rather than the Spirit of Christ, then how could such declaration of Jesus Christ be true? Saying no man in heaven, nor in earth, nor under the earth can be able to open. The word open, to explain. Look at from October 22, 1844. There are many different movements that arose from time to time, but not even one that explained the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. That we could rest assured the accuracy of the declaration of that strong angel in the heavenly sanctuary, that no man in heaven, nor in earth, nor under the earth is able to open the book. The book of the plan of redemption, which is pointing to the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. So, hoping, brethren, that you will continue listening and viewing this program, but I have full confidence and I fully believe that the 144,000 living saints will listen to this message without any doubts, brothers and sisters. So thank you very much, and hoping the good Lord will bless you, and we'll continue this subject in our next episode. Actually, every subject that we posted are closely connected with each other. And it is pointing to the events that will take place from 2020 onwards. So, thank you very much. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.